The Pats will be back in 2025. Yes, those New England Patriots will be back punishing the NFL this season. Welcome, football fans, and more importantly, welcome, Pats Nation. It's time to get hype because in 2025, the Patriots will rise from the ashes. The New England Patriots, the once despised franchise, because all they did was win. Nobody could stand us because the Patriots were too damn good. And I'm here to tell you and everyone watching this video the 5 reasons why the New England Patriots will be back in 2025. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button and don't forget to subscribe for NFL and New England Patriot off-season coverage, free agency, and the draft. Nobody does it better than the BLV. Now, comment below your opinion on the Patriots this year. Are you excited for free agency? Are you pumped for the draft? And do you think the Patriots will be back to their old ways this season? Let's begin this video with reason number 1. And just in case you don't speak English, that is reason number uno. The Patriots will be back in 2025 because of Drake Maye. Drake Maye is legit. That is Legit. Drake Maye is the real deal Holyfield. Drake Maye has all the skills to be a stud as soon as this season. No, not next season, not 2027, not 2028. In fact, I saw glimpses of stud from Drake this season. I'm talking 2024. I'm talking rookie campaign Drake Maye. What he did in the worst situation in the NFL for any quarterback, the worst, and we'll get to that in depth in just a moment. Drake Maye showcased that he has all the capabilities of being upper echelon, of being an MVP candidate for years to come. He's got the arm strength. He's got the arm flexibility and accuracy. He's got the touch. He's got the understanding of blitzes, where to go with the ball at the right time. He has great timing for a young player. He's extremely athletic. He is way more mobile than even I thought he was. And I made a video basically proclaiming that Drake Maye was going to be amazing in the NFL. He was my favorite quarterback in last year's NFL draft. And whether you believe he's the best right now or not, I think long-term, Drake Maye will become the best from last year's draft class. And that is saying a lot because it's looking like a great draft class, especially Jaden Daniels. But I still believe Drake Maye will be amazing. I believe he'll be spectacular. I believe he will take the Patriots back to the promised land. And we saw last season a 66.6 completion percentage in this offense last year is very impressive. What he did as a scrambler and a runner, 7.8 yards per attempt running the football. He was one of the most dynamic ball carriers in football last year. And you saw the big play capabilities. You saw the deep ball. You saw the nuance in his game. He was carrying the team. I have never seen a young quarterback carry the team on such a terrible team and play that admirably, I feel like in a long time, man. A lot of the best quarterbacks that we've seen as rookies have been in great situations. Very few of them have looked as good as Drake Maye did in such a bad situation. So Drake Maye is reason number one why Patriots fans should be absolutely pumped for 2025. Because at the end of the day, you could have a phenomenal roster, a great offensive line, great receiving core, a decent defense, and a coach that you love and admire. But if you do not have a stud of a quarterback, you have very little chance of being spectacular in the NFL right now. So Drake Maye gives you that chance of spectacular quarterback play. Just a couple stats to understand Drake Maye last season. He was the first player, okay, to have 10 different receivers catch his first 10 touchdowns. That was the first quarterback to do that since Steve Ramsey in 1973. He was throwing the ball to anybody that could catch it. Okay, and Drake Maye was carrying the offense. 22-year-old Drake Maye was the first quarterback in NFL history to have at least 700 passing yards, complete at least 60% of his passes, throw at least 6 touchdowns, and rush for at least 200 yards and 1 rushing touchdown through his first 4 starts. Drake Maye showcased massive upside. And I think we'll see that as soon as 2025. I really think Drake could be a top 10 quarterback this year. Now let's get to reason number 2 why I'm confident the Pats will be back in 2025. And guys, this is not like past years where I've come on here and I've tried to be uplifting and I've tried to be positive about the Patriots. I actually believe that the Patriots are going to be good this year. Like, I actually believe if the Patriots play their cards right, that they could be dynamic and they could actually take the NFL by storm and be the most promising, most improved NFL team in 2025. Reason number 2 is the off-season assets. This includes free agency and the draft. Okay, how do you fix a flawed roster? You do that through free agency and you do that through the draft, obviously, right? First of all, free agency comes first. That's how we're going to know maybe what they'll do in the draft based on what they do in free agency. But luckily for New England, they have not only, you've heard this a lot, the most cap space in the NFL at $126 million. But guys, just to understand how much they have $25 more million to spend than any team in the NFL. Now, sometimes that can't be seen as a good thing because that means you don't have a lot of talent. But as we'll get to a little bit later, I think they do have some talent that has actually been misplaced and misused, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But I think that they can spend $126 million and improve this team instantly by adding veteran contributors to this team, specifically on offense, where they do need more talent, right? They need to fill holes at wide receiver, at left tackle, right tackle, right? Those 3 positions in particular need to get some cash invested at them. And you even have the draft to reinforce those positions. Defensively, I feel like they could use a big-time pass rusher, whether that be on the edge. More specifically, I'd rather an edge player because I do think they're a little stronger in the interior, but an interior player could also be had as well. They have so much money that they could legitimately go out there and just recreate an entire side of the football. If they really wanted to, they could go out and spend on 11 new starters. Like, honestly, they have that much money to spend. And a lot of times in free agency, it's not about overpaying and getting the top names. It's about finding those veteran guys that fit your system the best and maybe are a little bit unheralded, maybe a little bit misused in other locations and other spots and can perfectly fit what the Patriots are trying to achieve. So look out for the diamonds in the rough as well. Don't just look at the amount of money that you have spent on a player, okay? Look at the guys that could potentially fill the needs and could actually have some appeal and upside on this team. Now, the draft. A lot of people have questions about the draft. where should they address in the draft, especially at number 4? Who should they pick? What should that player look like? Who should that player be? And obviously it depends on who is selected before number 4. Like, is there a quarterback taken? I would think if there is one, it would be Cam Ward, right? Does he go number 1 to Tennessee? Does he go number 3 to the New York Giants? I'm getting the suspicion that Shedeur Sanders will not be selected in the top 4. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. We will see, okay? That being said, I think there are some locks to go in the top 4. I think Abdul Carter is an absolute stone cold lock to go in the top 4, whether it be at number 1 to Tennessee, whether it be at number 2 to Cleveland, especially if they trade Myles Garrett, or at number 4 to the New England Patriots. I don't think the Giants would take Abdul Carter. They would probably take a different position. Now, Travis Hunter also feels like an absolute lock, being that he is probably the most talented athlete in the draft. Wide receiver, corner, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's 2 players that are probably certified locks to go in the top 4. All right, so it depends on where they go. Tennessee could take Carter. Tennessee could take Hunter. Those would both make sense, in my opinion. Also, number 2, it doesn't appear that the Browns will take a quarterback. So it kind of feels like, okay, quarterback could go to number 1, quarterback could go to number 3, but they're not going to go at 2 or 4. That would be my opinion there. Now, I could see Cam Ward sneaking in there, but if not, honestly, I don't know who else would go in the top 4, like certified locks. Like I could see McMillan going in the top 4, but in my opinion, that would be where the Patriots would select him. I don't think he would go 1 or 2 or 3. I think he would probably go to the Patriots. And right now, having seen limited tape on McMillan, going to dive in deeper, and I'll be making another video about the Patriots expressing what exactly I would do, like which free agents I would exactly go after, like which targets in the draft potentially in the first couple of rounds I would be looking for, at least the positions, and I would outline the first round and who I would want to pick. And right now I'm leaning towards McMillan because I like the idea of a X receiver in this offense being probably the biggest need on the team. Young, big, pretty fast, downfield ball winner, one-on-one threat, a guy that can win on the perimeter of an offense. That's exactly what you're trying to find in T. Higgins, is it not? Well, bring in McMillan, younger, could even be as good, if not better than T. Higgins long-term, in my opinion, just based on what I've seen from him. Some people are a little bit lower, and some people are a little bit higher on him. I've heard, some people are kind of all over the place. I've heard Campbell as another alternative at offensive line. Personally, I would rather go out there and find an offensive lineman in the 2nd and the 3rd round. And I would probably rather spend a little bit of money, a little bit of extra money on a tackle than trying to go after a veteran receiver. I'd rather go after that young stud receiver because they're so hard to find and acquire. You have to trade for them. You have to sign them to an extremes amount of money, right? You want to be able to draft these guys high in the draft. You want to be able to land the Malik Neighbors. You want to be able to land the Jamar Chases. You want to be able to land these guys in the 1st round because at least you have 4 or 3 years to work with them on rookie contracts and have them together with Drake Maye, for example, like McMillan with Drake Maye. If those work out, that's dynamic. That sets you up for years to come with your offense, right? You have your fundamentals right there. And the offensive lineman, I feel like you can get away with overpaying somebody a little bit because it's hard to find good offensive linemen in general. So I'd rather overpay that guy, right? Now, that being said, it's also harder to find great offensive linemen in the draft. A lot more of them bust, in my opinion. Now, they could go with the tackle or something like that in the draft. That's possible, but that would just be my preference right now, and I'll outline why that is, more in that other video. But that's reason number 2, right? You look at their draft, they've got the 4th pick, they've got the 38th pick, they've got multiple 3rd rounders, they've got 3 7ths, okay? This is a team that's going to be able to address many needs with one, locked and loaded stud, you would think, at 4th overall. And that's what they should be most worried about, getting the best possible player at the best possible position of need. Like, if it is Abdul Carter at 4, which I doubt, I would love him at 4. I just don't think he'll be there. If it's Travis Hunter at 4, I'd love him at 4. I'm just not sure he'll be there. I think he'll go in the top 3. So That's why I kind of said McMillan at 4. But, that's what I think, okay? So they have tons of cap space. They can address, maybe some of the more niche needs that they really want, like maybe a linebacker or maybe a third edge rusher in a rotation or maybe a big-time edge rusher, depending on what they think they're going to get in the draft. Maybe an interior defensive lineman, maybe a guard, maybe a second receiver. They could address a lot of these different positions throughout free agency with all the cap space that they do have. And I'm sure there'll be connections from Mike Vrabel's perspective, Josh McDaniels' perspective, all the different coaches that they've brought in this offseason where they can maybe get some good ties to players that would connect and fit within the Patriots' vision of their team moving forward, which is something that, honestly, I have been underselling until I researched for this video. Because my number 3 reason that the Patriots will be back in 2025 is the Patriots coaching staff is phenomenal. I don't think people realize how loaded the Patriots coaching staff is. I could have made an entire video just on this coaching staff. Like, this coaching staff deserves a lot more love, and I'm sure that people that are deep in the weeds of the NFL will be diving into this a little bit more once we get to June, July, and August. But just understand that your boy Mitch on the Bottom Line View was telling you first about the Patriots coaching staff. Let's dive into this coaching staff real quick. You have Mike Vrabel as the head coach. First of all, when Mike Vrabel was in Tennessee, he was, in my opinion, one of the, at very least, 10 best coaches in the NFL. He was the best underdog coach in the NFL for the first few years of his career in Tennessee. He is right there with Mike Tomlin in terms of the all-time best at winning with the team that is expected to lose. And I don't know, and I'm a coach myself, I coach lacrosse. I don't know anything greater as a coach than being able to win with the team that is expected to lose more than any other person. That speaks to coaching, okay? When the Vegas odds come out and they suggest that this team is going to lose, and Vegas wins more than they lose, as we know, okay? And Mike Vrabel is the one to displace that. That is extremely impressive, okay? Great leader, great teacher, great attitude, great charisma. Those are all things we're going to get from Mike Vrabel. He's going to be a phenomenal leader, especially for this organization that he knows so thoroughly, that he understands, that he played for, and that he loves. There's a different level here with Mike Vrabel. When he was in Tennessee, sure, he had a chip on his shoulder. He had to prove that he was a legitimate NFL head coach. And he constantly carried that chip, especially when he played the Patriots, right? But now in New England, it's something a little bit different. He was fired. He was let go from Tennessee, probably for reasons that are a little suspicious, a little uncertain, maybe a little suspect. But he's now going to a place that he loves. That means the world to him, right? And now he's having to rebuild what he was once a part of. That's a big deal, psychologically. So I believe in Mike Vrabel. I think he's a great coach, and I think he is going to be able to put the Patriots in positions to out-kick their coverage, to punch above their weight, okay? So that's first and foremost. But beyond Mike Vrabel, a lot of people are going to talk about Mike Vrabel. Beyond Mike Vrabel, this coaching staff is phenomenal. Josh McDaniels, one of the greatest offensive coordinators in NFL history, period, point blank. Whether that be with Tom Brady, whether that be with Matt Castle, whether that be with a rookie Mac Jones, or even a worn down, couldn't throw Cam Newton. He proved that he's a great offensive coordinator, specifically in New England. Sure, it hasn't worked out him as a head coach. But you know what he does have? A lot of experience with a plethora of quarterbacks, multiple organizations and franchises, a ton of different styles of players. I mean, and you talk about his experience of being a head coach. He's a former head coach. He's had to deal with the day-to-day. He's had to deal with the grind of being a head coach. He's seen the best teams around. He's been the man beside Bill Belichick for many years of success and championships. Josh McDaniels is one of the greatest assets of an assistant coach that you could ever have in the NFL. Him and like Steve Spagnuolo are like side by side in the same echelon of all-time great assistant coaches. I know that people don't really look at it that way because of the failures of Josh McDaniels as a head coach, but that was the same thing for Steve Spagnuolo. It's the same thing, right? People don't look at Josh the same way because people don't like him for some reason, but I know that Patriots fans admire him. So Josh McDaniels is an absolute stud of a coordinator, and I'm really excited to see what he can bring with a year off from football, being that he's been in different franchises, been peeking around and kind of, reinventing his offense and, potentially tweaking some things and reinventing some things. And I heard that he's been in the building of Kansas City and, been visiting college teams and things like that. So he's definitely going to have something, McDaniels magic, back in 2025. So I'm excited for Josh McDaniels. Beyond Josh McDaniels, because some people will bring up how great Josh McDaniels is at OC, how much that's going to help the offensive side of the ball. Well, Mike Vrabel might be able to sprinkle his knowledge a little bit more to defense because Josh is kind of like a head coach of the offense, just as he was for Bill. Okay, let's go beyond that. Doug Marrone is the offensive line coach. Doug Marrone is a great offensive line coach. And Doug Marrone used to be a head coach. He was a head coach for the Jacksonville Jags. And quite frankly, the best Jacksonville Jags team of my entire life. That should say something, right? He was the head coach of the 2017 Jacksonville Jags. Remember that team that lost the Patriots in the AFC Championship? That was Doug Marrone's team. Doug Marrone's been a head coach multiple places, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, but at least in Jacksonville he was, and he's been well regarded as an offensive line coach throughout his entire career. That's his specialty. If there is a positional coach that's more important than the others, we know it's offensive line, right? Dante Scarnecchia was so important to the Patriots dynasty. Could Doug Marrone be that next guy for the Patriots? Because he's not going to get another head coaching gig. He's going to be here for the long haul. So that is extremely exciting. That's a third former head coach on this staff. The fourth former head coach was brief, but Thomas Brown is on this Patriots staff. Thomas Brown, who just worked with Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, has worked with young quarterbacks in Carolina, was the offensive coordinator and play caller in Chicago last year at a brief time, and was also the head coach. He's going to be coaching the tight ends for the Patriots, which is a very influential position on offense because you have to have kind of really intimate knowledge of the run and the pass game. Tight end is that position like Brian Daboll used to coach for the Patriots. It's that position that you have to have the versatility and flexibility of understanding multiple levels of offense. You can't just get away with understanding the passing game or the running game. You have to have, because of the blocking assignments, all these different things. So having a former head coach last year for the last half of the season, having a guy that was an offensive play caller, an offensive coach, actually, in my opinion, he improved Chicago's offense last year. That's just my personal opinion. And having a guy that's been this highly thought of across the NFL in multiple organizations, that's a fourth head coach on this staff as a tight end coach. That's sweet, in my opinion. Getting a guy at that level to be a tight end coach is pretty sweet. And then you've got Ben McAdoo, who is going to be the senior defensive assistant of the Patriots this year. He worked on the offensive side, specifically with Drake Maye and the quarterbacks last year. He obviously will probably have some sort of relationship with the offense in some way, shape, or form because he is first and foremost a quarterback-driven coach. He always has been an offensive-driven play-calling coach. Back in the day for the Giants, he was a head coach, and also he worked with Eli Manning pretty intimately there. So Ben McAdoo has knowledge of being a head coach, has knowledge of being, a good offensive play caller, and then you twist that into being an influence for the defense to study offenses across the NFL. So that's not 1, 2, 3, 4, but five NFL head coaches on one staff. 5 former NFL head coaches, including our head coach, Mike Vrabel, on our staff. and a lot of them on offense, which is really interesting and I like a lot, okay? Because offense is more important than defense in this NFL, okay? Especially with the current guys that we have in the personnel and Drake Maye's development. That is very important in my opinion. So the coaching staff, that core, but then you kind of begin to tear apart the rest of the staff. And the next name that stands out, and guys, I'm going deep here. Todd Downing is also on the staff. You might know who Todd Downing is. He was the offensive coordinator. So now we have, on the next layer, we've got 5 former head coaches. Now we've got a former offensive coordinator being a wide receiver coach on our staff. Todd Downing worked with Mike Vrabel in Tennessee as their offensive coordinator after Arthur Smith. He wasn't great, and he hasn't been a great play caller, but having that knowledge of being an offensive coordinator and now turning back into a wide receiver coach where he was most successful in Tennessee, working with A.J. Brown, etc., that is, pretty cool. He was also the pass game coordinator with Aaron Flippin' Rodgers last year with the New York Jets, right? And he's been an offensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders back with Derek Carr. So this guy, especially with a West Coast-based system, has a lot of knowledge there. So a wide receiver coach having an offensive play caller look at the wide receiver position from that standpoint. I mean, all these different guys, whether it be Thomas Brown, Todd Downing, Ben McAdoo, Doug Marrone, working with Josh McDaniels on offense to be able to come up with things and creative schemes and plays on a weekly basis, that is very fun, in my opinion. So that's the next layer. Then you get to Jason... Here's a who. I don't know how to say his name, bro. It's like who Tolling. I don't know how to say his name. But he was the Titans offensive line coach in 2023, I believe. He was the assistant offensive line coach in 21 and 22. And he was the assistant Bears offensive line coach last season. So he's been in multiple organizations as an assistant offensive line coach. He'll be the assistant offensive line coach behind Doug Marrone. So he's been a guy that's been elevated to offensive line coach before, and he's working as an assistant. That's always cool. Okay, so that's another added layer of depth. Now let's flip to the defensive side of the football. Terrell Williams is going to be the defensive coordinator. He was Detroit's defensive line coach, but he's been a very solid defensive line coach in the NFL for a number of years. Raiders, Dolphins, and Titans with Mike Vrabel specifically from 2018 through 2022. So they have a close relationship there. Mike Vrabel and Williams can work together to piece together this defense, okay? And I like that he has specifically a defensive line background because in my opinion, getting the most out of your pass rush is probably the most fundamental area that you can really make or break a defense. If your defensive line is sweet, it's hard to have a bad defense, right? And he also was really influential with the Lions last year in their run defense. He was the run game coordinator and the D-line coach for the Detroit Lions in their very successful 2024 season, where they had so many players go in and out, and partly responsible for an amazing breakout for Aiden Hutchinson before he got injured, right? So, yeah, really good coach there in Terrell Williams. Then you have Zach Kerr, okay, New York Giant, Tennessee linebacker coach, a defensive assistant last season with the Giants. So he'll be the linebacker coach. Scott Booker will coach the safeties. He was a senior defensive assistant and nickel coach for the Buffalo Bills. Previous to that, he was with the Tennessee Titans as a defensive assistant. So a lot of these guys on defense are specifically tied to the tenure of Mike Vrabel. Back from like 2018 through 2023, right? That's the range of a lot of these guys. But I like that some of these guys like Kerr and Booker were able to go to different organizations and get jobs elsewhere and play an influential role. Like Booker working with, the secondary of the Bills and learning with Sean McDermott and that defense and that scheme. That's really cool to me. Scott Booker and then Zach Kerr working with the Giants as well. So that's pretty cool. And then you've got Clint McMillan, who will be the defensive line coach. 2024, he was an assistant D-line coach and a pass rush specialist. 2023, a defensive assistant coach. 2021 and 2022, defensive line assistant coach. He was also, back in the day with Mike Vrabel. Justin Hamilton is really interesting as the cornerback coach. He was the Colts assistant defensive back coach last year And more specifically, he was the defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech for multiple seasons. So he actually has experience calling plays for a defense at, a pretty high level of college football. So that's also interesting to me. Justin Hamilton as the corner coach. Mike Smith was the Jets outside linebacker coach in 2012 with Rex Ryan. He was in Kansas City and Green Bay with the defensive line and outside linebackers from 2016 through 2021. And he was with the Vikings and Brian Flores in 2022 and 2023. This one is a little bit more disconnected. Mike Smith working with the outside linebackers. To Mike Vrabel, I'm not sure what the connection is exactly. If anyone knows, let me know. But that's an intriguing name, and specifically looking at the places that he's coached: Kansas City, multiple Super Bowl winners, Green Bay, Minnesota with Brian Flores. That's like really interesting to me. So, and Rex Ryan, I mean, really well regarded, specifically 3-4-esque styles of defense. So, intrigued by that. And then they also brought in one guy that I think is going to be hugely influential in the direction of this franchise. That's John Stryker. And a lot of people probably don't know who this is, but Sean McVay loves him, and he was very upset about losing him because Sean Stryker last year was the game management coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams and worked beside Sean McVay in LA last year. But before that, he was Mike Vrabel's right-hand man for football operations. You know, Ernie Adams, right? Ernie Adams is the all-time great right-hand man of Bill Belichick. This is that guy for Mike Vrabel, John Stryker, okay? Director of football administration, coordinator of football development, assistant head coach. That type of guy where he's going to be very involved on game day. He's going to be very involved in the research for the team, for the opponents, for for the draft, whatever it may be, whatever he is needed to do for game management purposes. He really helped Sean McVay in that regard. So he is a guy that could really elevate the details of the organization from last season. So that was a very deep dive into the coaching staff of the Patriots. Honestly, could have deserved its own video. I might actually just release this as a video itself. But that coaching staff, you go through all the former head coaches. You go through the impressive resume of these defensive coaches, and you look at it. I don't think there's many deeper staffs in the NFL right now. I mean, it is a really impressive staff for the 2025 New England Patriots, and coaching is a huge reason why teams are successful. Reason number 4, why the Patriots are going to be a problem in 2025. It's the underrated roster, the misused roster of the New England Patriots. And I'm specifically talking about the 2024 team on defense, okay? Let's look at it, all right? In 2023, the New England Patriots had, by many metrics, including EPA, success rate, right, a very good defense, like a top 5 level defense. Just for reference, they were 11th in time of possession allowed, 4th in plays allowed, 3rd in yards per drive allowed, 5th in points per drive allowed. So they were 3rd in yards per drive and 5th in points per drive in 2023. And that was with the worst starting position in the NFL. That was the 2023 Patriots defense, okay? A top 5 defense in the NFL. What happened between 2023 and 2024? The Patriots, Bentley got injured at linebacker. Christian Barmore got injured on the defensive line. Matt Judon got traded, but if you remember correctly, he didn't play a lot in 2023. He was injured early in the year. That being said, though, Christian Gonzalez came back. He got hurt very early in his rookie season. Jabril Peppers was in and out of the lineup. Kyle Duggar definitely regressed, and multiple players regressed. Jonathan Jones, for example, regressed. Kyle Duggar being one of them, Tavai maybe being one of them, if you want to point that out, Devon Godshaw maybe being one of them, right? Players got worse, but was that the player or was that the scheme? Was that the coaching, right? We just talked about how good that coaching is, how nice this staff could be, right? And you look at last year's defense, right? 29th in time of possession per drive in comparison to 11th in 2023. They were 25th in yards allowed per drive in compared to 3rd in 2023. They were 27th in points allowed per drive in 2024 compared to 5th in 2023. And they didn't have the worst starting position. That is an example of coaching, because the team still had Keon White. In fact, he was better last year than the year before. They still had Anthony Jennings, right? They still had Devon Godshaw. They had Christian Barmore for a brief period. They had Kyle Duggar. They had Jabril Peppers for a brief period. They still had Marte Mapu to work with. They had guys step up like Christian Ellis, who graded well by PFF this year. Pettis, who graded well by PFF at safety this season. They had Gonzo for the entire year. They had Marcus Jones for the entire year. They had Alex Austin on the roster. They had Jonathan Jones on the roster. So what happened? I think the difference was that when Bill Belichick and Steve Belichick left, the defense lost an ability to manufacture pressure with scheme, which was the biggest problem with the defense. They couldn't create pressure on the quarterback. And there's not a lot different in the personnel, if you really look at it. And then I think the coverage tricks and understanding of formations and what an offense likes to do and doesn't like to do, I think that was missed. Between the combination of Mayo and Covington, they were not nearly on the same wavelength or the same difference-making defense as the Bill Belichick-led unit. So yeah, I understand that's Bill Belichick, and I understand now it's Mike Vrabel. But in my opinion, I'll take Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams and this staff that they've assembled on defense light years above Gerard Mayo and the unproven, inexperienced play calling of Covington, who I respected previous to last season. So I look at the defense specifically, and that's where I'm talking about this is an underrated, misused, mismanaged defense. Okay? You've got a stud power rusher in Keon White. He's good. Anthony Jennings is a good run defender. Christian Barmore moving forward, as long as he's healthy, will be a very good player. Devon Godshaw is objectively a good run defender. Okay? Jawan Bentley being back will be nice. He's objectively a solid starting linebacker. Tavai has been solid in the defense. Christian Ellis and Pettis and these guys that stood up and played niche roles for them, I think they could do the same next year if they want. They don't have to. They could upgrade those players, like we talked about with the cap space and the draft capital. But they played decent last year, right? Marte Mapu could get a little bit better next year. Is he a safety or is he a linebacker? Maybe misused in his categorization, right? Kyle Duggar, was he misused in his role, right? Think about that. Jabril Peppers, how was he used? Jonathan Jones, was he misused? Should he play the nickel spot instead of the perimeter? Should Marcus Jones play the outside instead of the nickel, right? Should Alex Austin have played more, considering how well he has played when he did play, right? Christian Gonzalez, how should they use him? How should they not use him, right? These are all things that you have to consider when you're talking about coaching and misusing a team. I really do believe that the most disappointing part of last year's team was the defense, because despite the injuries in 2023, they still played very well. And sure, they played a tougher schedule in 2024, but I think a lot of that came down to coaching. And I could see a huge uplifting performance by the defense in 2025. I could see a turnaround from that unit. Now, the fifth and final reason why the Patriots will be back in 2025 is they honestly can't be worse on offense than they were. They can't be any worse from a personnel perspective. And I'm specifically aiming at the offensive line, guys. I'm specifically talking about the offensive line. This is one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen from the perspective of grading and stats. This team was graded 32nd in pass blocking and 32nd in run blocking by a majority of metrics. Not just PFF, but you throw in ESPN, you throw in all these different metrics. They were downright despicable, awful, disgusting. And they were regularly starting players that no one had ever heard of across the NFL. That just doesn't happen, especially considering how much cap space they have, what their draft capital looks like. There's just no possible way their offensive line will be that bad ever again. And if they give better protection for Drake Maye, if they can stabilize a running game, if you add on to the layers of coaching that they're now going to get from Josh McDaniels just alone, it's going to be so much better. It's not even going to look the same. It's not even going to feel the same. It's not even going to be the same, right? And then you do look at the staff of players that they have. They have a veteran leader of a center in Dave Andrews. Hey, Dave Andrews wouldn't drop the ball. I'll say that. They've got Michael Onwenu, who previous to last year was seen as a really great guard in the NFL. They have two pretty interesting dual threat running backs in Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson. They've got a good, reliable tight end in Hunter Henry, who's also a leader. They have a slot receiver who I think could see his best years with Josh McDaniels and Demario Douglas. They have a guy like Kendrick Bourne who's used to the offense and should be able to fill out a depth role. And you've got Kayshon Boutte, who actually flashed some potential as a perimeter receiver. So you look at the offensive staff around the offensive line and even a couple pieces on the O-line, maybe even a Cole Strange, who is a former first-round pick. Could he find a home on this offensive line as well? Like, there's going to be pieces here to work with from this coaching staff's perspective. It's not going to be completely rebuilt. Like I said, I think what they need is they need that coaching to take shape. They need Drake Maye to be Drake Maye. They need to get a couple tackles, a wide receiver, and some players on defense to fill out the pass rush and the second level. And I feel like this defense and this team and this offense will be a problem in 2025. So that, guys, is the 5 reasons why I believe the New England Patriots will be a problem for the NFL in 2025. Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Mitch. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.